Dragon's Dogma 2. Man, what a game. Full disclosure, Capcom sent me a copy of the game early, like 2 days early, and so I got a chance to play it, and I love the game. I'd go so far as to say it might be Game of the Year. So alas, before we talk about the game, let's first talk about the current controversy with the game. The biggest and probably most important controversy is in fact performance. Dragon's Dogma 2 is CPU bound. What this essentially means is lowering the graphical fidelity will still help with the frame rate, but it won't help nearly as much. What this ultimately means is your computer will need to have a great CPU to really play this game at a playable frame rate. But what this actually means for my audience is that, more or less, you can't play this game on Steam Deck, not in its current form. It fares a bit better on Z1 Extreme based hardware, such as the ROG Ally and Lenovo Legion Go, around 20 to 30 FPS on all low settings. And yes, I've spent most of my time on Dragon's Dogma on my Legion Go. That said, Capcom said they are looking into it, so there's a good chance that either A, Capcom fixes the game, or B, a modder comes around and makes a mod that helps improve the performance. It seems like the general consensus is this entire performance fiasco has to do with all of the NPCs. Everything from townsfolk to important NPCs to enemies and even bosses, and even your own pawns. There are even reports of players mass killing every NPC they see so they can improve their frame rates. And yes, killing NPCs can permanently kill them if you don't revive them in time. So yes, performance is the most urgent issue, and the one issue that Capcom needs to fix ASAP. Also related to performance is stability. Some people report constantly crashing before they can even actually play the game. Personally, I haven't experienced this for myself, and the game always launched and played on all of my systems. Yes, even my Steam Deck where it runs at like 15 FPS. I think the only big content creator I've seen have this issue is Moist Critical, and I'm very positive he has a killer gaming PC, so it's definitely not because he has a weak PC. I'm not gonna lie to you though, I don't have that much information on crashing in Dragon's Dogma 2, but I do hope Capcom can get down to the bottom of it, because it does suck. It sounds like it sucks really badly. The second major controversy is of course microtransactions. Part of the review guide stipulates that yes, there are in fact microtransactions. Some content creators like me got this document, and some others didn't. If I'd gotten this game early enough and reviewed it early enough, I probably would have mentioned it myself, because there's no stipulation stating that we can't share this information or even the document itself. I will say that microtransactions are strictly not necessary. There's literally nothing locked behind purchases that you can't just buy in-game, and they aren't really that expensive in-game. Probably the rarest thing is a port crystal, but you can't even use a port crystal without buying something in-game to begin with. So if you're worried that Capcom is artificially limiting your progress without you paying, then worry not, because I can confirm that all this stuff is really easy to get, and I'm only like 20 hours in as of the making of this video. But on the other hand, I do think it's a really bad look. It's a single player title that's also $70. And of course, microtransactions don't really add a lot of value for the gamer. Even if you don't really need it, it is a net negative overall. I suppose the one good thing, aside from these not necessarily being necessary, is that the game doesn't bombard you with advertisements. The game doesn't prompt you to buy microtransactions when you're low on cash. And furthermore, something I found extremely baffling is that the microtransaction system is one-time purchase for all of the microtransactions, which means you can only buy each item once. It's an extremely baffling decision, and I'm not even sure why it was even set up this way. They get all the negative flack for microtransactions without getting any of the actual benefit, which is people repeatedly spending money. It's probably the most unusual decision I've ever seen for microtransactions, period. I'm not saying Capcom should make them repeatedly purchasable. I think they shouldn't have them at all. But I just wanted to point out this really weird decision. The next controversy is, of course, Denuvo. Yes, I can promise you no one likes Denuvo. I certainly don't like Denuvo. And Denuvo has been documented to cause performance issues in certain games, even Capcom's own games like Devil May Cry 5. And Denuvo can cause problems on Steam Deck, especially if you like to change around different versions of Proton. But what I'm about to say is a bit of a hot take. But if I had to choose between games not coming to PC at all and games having Denuvo, then I think the choice is pretty clear. I would in fact prefer the game to come to PC with Denuvo than the game just not be released at all on PC. There is a silver lining though. Denuvo tends to be removed about a year after a game's release, which lets developers protect their initial sales and then later on remove the DRM as it's no longer necessary. While I would prefer a game be released without Denuvo, this would be the next best thing. And finally, the last controversy is you can't start a new game at all. Yes, Dragon's Dogma 2 has a single save file, and once you start the game, there's no official way to start a new game, which is unfortunate, and I think Capcom needs to address this as well. So that about covers the major controversy with Dragon's Dogma 2. But now for the interesting part, how's the game? Well, the game is like 95% combat and exploration, and both of those are great here. On the surface, it kind of looks like a Souls-like, but it really isn't a Souls-like. Combat is its own unique beast. You pick one of many different classes, some of which you'll have to unlock further into the game. These classes affect what weapons you can use and what skills you have available to you. And man, the melee combat in this game feels incredibly satisfying. If you've ever played Monster Hunter before, it does feel very much like Monster Hunter. I mean, same developers, right? Fighting enemies around your size is always fun, and fighting humanoids that can fight similarly to you and your parties is always exciting. It makes me wonder why there isn't a Dragon's Dogma PvP. And of course, fighting huge monsters is always exhilarating. These are dangerous fights that can take a while and potentially kill you if you're unprepared, but you have the ability to climb on these monsters to deal damage to specific weak spots. On top of that though, you have the ability to knock these monsters off balance. Like for example, if you manage to make a Cyclops stumble and he's like hobbling on one leg, you can grab and pull the Cyclops' remaining leg and it'll fall down, opening it up to some extra damage. Anyways, the terrain matters a lot in this game. And when I say a lot, I mean it matters a lot more than you would have expected for any action RPG. Like yes, fighting on a mountaintop is perilous because you could fall down and die. And of course, fighting in dark caves can put you at a disadvantage due to all the tight corners. But there's also aspects of the game that you really wouldn't expect to matter all that much. Like for example, steep inclines. Yes, you can fight on these steep inclines, but the issue is that you could easily lose your footing. And of course, the most important part of combat is just preparation. You'll ideally want a balanced team that can handle any situation. Got a team of all melee users? Well then you're probably going to have issues with all the birds in the game. Got a team of all spellcasters or archers? Then you'll likely have issues with close range combatants. There is no one size fits all party, and you'll need to adjust your party accordingly. Thanks to the pawn system though, you can find party members that have multiple different specifications. You can search for their specific roles, or the type of personality, or even if they have knowledge on quests. And speaking of quest designs, many quests have different outcomes. Many side quests are timed and will progress if you ignore them. And even in the main quest line, there are many ways to tackle a situation. I'll tell you about one main quest line. It's fairly early in the game, but essentially you have to cross a border. There's a number of ways to tackle this situation. If you chose to be a beast person, you can pass through fairly easily through the intended way. If you're a human, then you can put on a mask and pass through as well. Or if you're smart like me, you can wait for a cart to come by, sneak onto the cart, and then let the cart go through the border, doing it illegally. Or you can not bother with any of that and just find an alternative cave. I'm sure there are even more ways to cross the border that I'm not aware of, but this is truly superb quest design. I don't want to say it's immersive sim levels of quest design, but it does feel that way in certain quests. That said, I've yet to complete the game, so it's hard to know whether or not the rest of the game will hold up to this, but this is looking good. From my first 20 hours of the game, it already feels like my game of the year. Yes, even taking into account those three main issues. I think once Capcom fixes up the performance and also the ability to make a new character, like 90% of the internet's issues with Dragon's Dogma 2 is gonna go away. Is the game worth its $70 price point? Well, I have a good enough computer to run it. Mine is running an Intel Core i7 8700K and an RTX 3070. I'm also running the game in ultra-wide, 3440 by 1440. So if you have the computer to run Dragon's Dogma 2, then definitely recommend it. But if you're the type of person that likes the game on your Steam Deck or even your ROG Ally or Lenovo Legion Go, then it may be worth waiting for Capcom to put out performance patches. Yes, I predicted that this game wouldn't run well on the Steam Deck in a prior video I made. And yes, sometimes it does suck that I'm right. That said, the Z1 Extreme processor devices, you know, the ROG Ally and Lenovo Legion Go, run the game at like double the frame rate the Steam Deck does. Mostly due to the fact that the Z1 Extreme has a superior CPU. But even at max TDP all low settings, the game only runs at like 20 to 30 FPS. But there is an alternative, but it requires playing the game on the cloud. You can play Dragon's Dogma 2 on GeForce Now. I haven't really tested it out for myself, but I really should. But I can promise you that even the basic free version of GeForce Now will be a much better experience than trying to play Dragon's Dogma 2 on the Steam Deck natively. If you need a guide for setting up GeForce Now on the Steam Deck, I have a video linked down below. If you like this video, please press the like button and check out our other videos, and if you like those other videos as well, be sure to press the subscribe button and share the good gospel of high-tech lowlife with your friends. Furthermore, we have a community Discord for enlightened individuals such as you. And if you wish to further support high-tech lowlife, be sure to check out our Patreon page. Links in the description.